But thanks for joining us. In the next conversation in our mayoral series, Republicans. Yes, you may not read about them much, but they also have a primary and on the same day as the Democratic primary, which you read about all the time. Now, I will say, obviously, the winners of both these primaries will face off in the fall. And while most of the reporting takes for granted that whoever wins the Democratic Party primary will be the mayor, as a deputy mayor recently said to me, longtime deputy mayor, no longer deputy mayor, said to me, he's like, when you. And the second thing is, politics has created unusual things, especially lately, and then you never know what to expect. So I should say, you guys all know this election is really important. We did well as a city in the stimulus package and as a state, and that's wonderful for us, but we still have plenty of challenges, and whoever is the next mayor will face those challenges. And that is why we feel it's so important to hear from the candidates and understand the issues that matter to them. Today, it is our pleasure to have Fernando Mateo, one of the leading Republican candidates for mayor. As a native of the Dominican Republic and a lifelong New Yorker, he has always been a champion of small business, of immigrants, and of communities that are often overlooked. From his work as president of the New York Federation of Taxi Drivers, where he secured $5 million in grants for installing bulletproof partitions in taxis, to his founding of the Bodega Association of America, to his creation of job training programs at Rikers Island for incarcerated first-time nonviolent offenders, he has spent the last 3 decades tackling big civic issues with an entrepreneurial mindset. And that entrepreneurial spirit continues today with his restaurant, Zona de Cuba, a rooftop oasis in the Bronx, which you can go to and still be socially distanced, that has experienced firsthand the impacts of this pandemic on our beloved restaurant community. If elected, he said he will continue to help helping small businesses and to reduce crime as 2 of his top priorities. And I'm particularly interested in hearing about his plans for Rikers Island and how he might shape the future of Rikers Island. We thank Fernando for taking the time to join us today. We look forward to hearing from him on those topics as well as more. And then Mel will ask some questions. Fernando, zoom over to you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it my turn?
It's all you.
Okay. Well, I'm a native New Yorker, actually. I've lived here my entire life. New York is the air that I breathe, the water that I drink, and the people that I love. New York to me is an experience. You can travel New York and actually travel to every country in the world just about. There are pockets of different people from different countries and different communities. So if you want to see what different cultures are about, you don't have to leave the country. You just need to come to New York. And that's what we will be pushing when I am mayor of New York City, is inviting people to come to New York so that they can actually experience the world. New York City has had a lot of ups and downs. And throughout my entire life, I have seen a lot of different mayors come and go. And I have seen a lot of different administrations come and go. I was fortunate enough to have that experience. And most of us have not, especially, those that were born in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They never experienced what the 60s were. And those were phenomenal years. As a kid, I dropped out of school when I was 14 years old. And I learned a skill. I learned a trade at the age of 16. But while I was a kid, I was adopted by a Jewish family who gave me an opportunity to become someone. And molding my mind at that age was what made me who I am today. When you're a kid and you are around people that want to succeed, when you're around business, when you're around educators of real life, you tend to learn what life is about at a young age. So at 17, I was married, and I have 3 children, and I lived in the Lower East Side. I lived there for quite some time, but I've lived in all 4 boroughs. As an immigrant, my parents moved from borough to borough, and then as an adult, I lived in Queens. I lived in the Bronx. Now I live in Manhattan. And it's been quite an experience. By the time I was 25 years old, I was very wealthy. I was a very wealthy guy, and I was doing very well. And I always thought about, what can I do for New York? What do you do when you have a lot of money and you're living a good life, and you turn the block and you see someone that's homeless, or you see someone that's struggling, and you see someone that could use a hand, like I could have used the hand when I was 14. And I decided at that point to go to Rikers Island. Why Rikers Island? Because a lot of kids were there, of parents that I knew as a kid. And I figured, you know what? These kids aren't bad. You're not in jail because you're bad. You're in jail because you committed a mistake. And if you commit a nonviolent mistake in New York City or in anywhere, you should have a second opportunity. I believe in that. And I taught, trained, and employed first-time nonviolent offenders a skill. And when they came out, I had an agreement with the unions that they would give them jobs. And you know what? It worked out really well for most of these kids. At the age of, in 1993, I decided to help the city disarm people that weren't using their guns for smart reasons other than, to rob and kill and assault others. And we were able to get thousands of guns off the city streets in a few weeks. And I worked very closely with the mayor's office, with the police department, and with local precincts. And I realized that it was something good for the city. And crime did come down substantially when Mayor Giuliani was elected into office. In 1999, the taxi industry came to me, a bunch of cab drivers that had lost friends and family, and they asked me to help them organize and help, save some lives there. And I did. I got involved, and for years we basically worked very hard with the governor, with the mayor, to get laws changed, with senators and assembly people and council members, and the whole political machine of New York City. And we were able to pass laws that really punished those that murdered a driver or assaulted a driver or robbed a driver. And that helped us reduce crime. And of course, then the bodega owners came to me, and we did the same there. So I'm very, very involved in what New York City is about, what its diversity is about. And I've been a Republican my entire life. And I was very proud when Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to millions and millions, tens of millions of immigrants that had come here and had been working and did the right thing in this country. And he legalized their status. And today, most of them are US citizens. I also, was very grateful that as a Republican, I was able to work very hard and succeed, because when you work hard, you succeed. And the people that I helped are people that needed the help the most, people that lived in city housing projects, people that, were underpaid, or people that were working for under minimum wage, or people that were just struggling. And those are communities that are, the vast majority of them are Democratic communities. So the efforts that I've done in the last 3 decades, I've done them for Democrats, for people that really need it. So I don't like when, we badmouth each other, that, Republican, when you stereotype a party, you don't do that. You look at the person that is running, and you make your judgment based on that person, not based on the party that he represents. And you don't blame him for party decisions, because every party has its good, every party has its bad. If we look at the last 10 years, what's happened in the Democratic Party, even what's happening today with Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, it's hard for me to point a finger at them and blame them, and blame the Democrats. I'm sorry. I can blame them personally for those terrible things that they've done, but I can't blame the party because they're not all the same. So I'm hoping that New Yorkers are going to look at me in that light. They're going to look at me and say, you know what? Fernando Mateo is not a right-wing racist or Republican that we can't vote for. No, I want them to say, This is a guy that's done a lot. If he can do at City Hall what he's done during the last 3 decades, we will have a very successful city. Rikers Island. Rikers Island is very dear to me because I met a lot of kids there. I interviewed a lot of kids, and I selected them to come into the Mateo Institute of Training program. What I would do there, first thing is I would rename it the Khalif Browder Rehabilitation Center. And why Browder? Because Browder was a victim of the system. He was a kid that didn't have $250 for bail, and he was in jail for 3 years. 2 of those years in solitary confinement. Anyone could go crazy with this kind of treatment to a young man, to a kid. Really, he's a kid. And I believe that if Rikers were a rehabilitation center, he would have had an opportunity to at least get out of jail because of his activities while incarcerated. I would install a huge vocational school at Rikers Island. One that while you're being detained there, you're able to go into these different classrooms and learn what it is to be an electrician. Electricians earn a lot of money, plumbing, welding, carpet laying, boiler making. I mean, give them the tools to be able to come out and become someone and do something with their lives, because they're not going to go to college. We all know that. So let's use their time wisely, and let's make sure that we make them better people than where they were in. It's like I say, if you take a kid that comes out of school and his parents or his mother is working, and this kid has nothing to do and all this free time in his hands, what is he going to do? He's going to hang out in the streets with the wrong people, and he's going to get in trouble. If our small businesses are able to have incentives from government, there's a lot of government waste, and we all know that. There's a lot of government pork, a lot of fat, that's misused, okay? Taxpayer dollars misused. I would take them to make sure that these kids have jobs all year round, or at least have the opportunity to work all year round. Because when you take them out of an environment that's poor, that's sad, that's dangerous, and you put them in an environment where they can see what, they're working at a stock brokerage firm, they're working in a barber shop, they're working in a bodega, they're working in a restaurant. They get to interact with older people with knowledge, people that are professionals, and you will change the mindset. And we need to do that in order to change that mindset, because, the years go by quickly. A 14-year-old in 7 years is 21 years old, and he's an adult. What's he going to do as an adult? We can change a lot of lives in our system quickly if we start immediately. And that's what I would do as mayor, is I would engage the corporate America, little America, with our youth, because that's our future, man. That's where we're going to hit a home run. And that's where we're going to start seeing change. Not today, but very quickly. I remember the Obama girls, when he was elected president, they were little. Today, they're young ladies. And believe me, it seemed like if it was yesterday, right? So that's what I would want to do in New York. I don't want New York City to be a political fight, struggle between the governor and the mayor, between the mayor and the president. I want them to hear common sense issues so that we can make common sense decisions with our homeless people. Our homeless people have the right to live in dignity, but you're not giving them that right when you're putting them in a community that doesn't want them, because then they feel hated and they hate. So you're actually making the problem worse. If you give everyone their space and their dignity, people will respect that, and people will change. People will turn the corner. That's the kind of Republican that I am. And I want to make it very clear. Describe me as who I am as a person and what kind of government I will have. And stop saying that Republicans don't stand a chance. Because if that were true, we wouldn't have had 20 years of a Republican mayor and 12 years of a Republican governor. You know, New York is fair game. That's the beauty of New York. New York is a city of immigrants, of different minds, of different people, different thinking. I will not be everything to everyone, because when you try to be everything to everyone, you fail. You've got to be everything for the right reasons, for the right causes, and then you will succeed. Kids, you know, when you have children, I don't know if any of you have little kids, but if you do, what do you want for your kids? You want good education. You want them to go to good schools. You don't want to expose them to drugs and violence and bullying. And you know what? You should have the right to protect your child. And the right, what I mean by the right, I mean by the right to send them to the proper school where he's going to get the proper education without racism, without bureaucrats deciding what's good and what's bad. You're the parent. You're the one that should decide what's good and what's bad. And when you mix children together, children don't know what hate is unless they're taught that. So if you have Hispanics, Chinese, blacks, whites, Indians, all going to school together, they grow up understanding what these cultures are about. That's what I want for our schools. That's what I want for our kids. That's what I want for parents, to have that right. You know, I know a lot of parents that send their kids to school and tell me, you know what, Fernando, my kid goes to school and comes back home starving because they hate the food that's given to them in schools. You know, these are issues that are so simple to resolve. We have technology. You have a lot of restaurants around these schools, a lot of delis, a lot of pizza shops, right? Wouldn't it be nice for you to ask your child in the morning, Jose, what would you like to eat today? Jose, I like pizza, Mom. Okay, Monday you're having pizza. Tuesday you're having a salad. Wednesday you're having Indian food. Thursday you're having Chinese food. And Friday you're having rice and beans, right? And get the local restaurants to come into a program that not only helps a small business, but that feeds our kid, because a hungry kid is not a smart kid. They can't focus when they're hungry. See, those are the kinds of things that I would do, is I would engage parents into their children's life when the children are away from them. They should say, oh, when they're eating lunch, oh, Mom, the lunch you ordered for me today was really good. Not, Mom, I'm starved. I hate that, you know, mac and cheese they serve in school. It was terrible, right? So these are things that I know, and I know they're practical because I'm not a politician and I don't like politics, right? So most of the people that are running with a political mentality. I want to take that out of City Hall. I want to be able to bring a practical way of running this city. And those are a few of the things. Let me see. Bail reform. Bail reform is a very dangerous thing because there are people that should be in jail. There are people that deserve to get time in jail. Why? Because of the level of crime that they've committed. If you rob my mother and kill my mother, or yours, or your friends, or your family, or your children, they don't deserve to go into a system that says, oh, you can't afford $10,000 bail. You know what? You're free. You're free to go. Now this guy comes out and kills a cab driver, kills a bodega owner, kills a relative of yours. You know, there are people, if you read the papers every day, there are people that are dying every single day. You know, because the city let out thousands of people that shouldn't have been let out of jail. They're dangerous. They're people that aren't ready to be in society. They haven't paid for the last crime they committed, and they're out committing more crime. Okay. So, and this is not a racial equality thing. This is not a a, uh, 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 a thing that has to do with anything other than you've committed a crime. It's that simple. It doesn't matter who you are. If you do it, you go to jail. And so I would certainly advocate for this bail reform to be changed so that it reflects people like Khalif Browder, who was accused of stealing a backpack. I mean, give me a break, all right? You know, that should have never happened. And there are many cases like that where bail reform should come into play and not destroy someone's life. I would advocate for pardoning certain type of crimes so that you don't ruin someone's life forever, where they can't get a job because of their past record. You look at the record, you look at the rehabilitation that that person has gone through, and you look at what skills he might have learned and how well he's doing. And after a period of time, that person should be forgiven. He should be pardoned, and he should have the right to start all over again. Because if you take that right away from people, that you only give them one way one way, and that is the wrong way. You can't get a job, you can't work, you don't have dignity. That forces you back into doing what's not right, and that's why I believe in that. Our economy, oh God, that's after public safety. By the way, public safety is number one. The economy and small businesses is number two in my agenda. Public safety to me is what drives the economy of a city. No one wants to be in a city that's not safe. No one wants to come into a city that's not safe. And cities that are not safe are cities where everyone leaves. Everyone just, leaves the city. That to me is number one. I want you to feel safe when you come to New York as a tourist. I want you to feel safe when you live in New York City. I don't want you to fear going out at night, going to a restaurant, going to, enjoy yourself. New York City needs public safety. We need more police officers out on our streets. We need them on every platform, train platform, 24/7. Why? Because not everyone can afford an Uber, not everyone can afford a Lyft, not everyone can afford a taxi. So it's important that you feel safe if you get off of work after midnight. From midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a huge workplace that goes home. Those that serve us and that entertain us overnight. And when you get into a lonely platform, you don't know what's going to happen. If you see law enforcement there, at least you feel safe, going into the subways. And I would make sure that we can do that we achieve that. I would make sure that, I change not the entire police department, but a lot of the heads at the police department, because they have that old culture. They have that culture of abusing their power, okay? I believe that if you put chiefs up on top that are common sense thinking people like myself, you will trickle down that to your police officers coming out of the academy. Those good old days of you abusing your power are over. But guess what's also over? The citizens of New York City disrespecting our police officers. I will not tolerate that. I will not tolerate someone spitting at an officer, confronting an officer, trying to intimidate an officer, throwing a bucket of water on an officer. That is unacceptable. Law enforcement, we need law enforcement to protect us, because guess what? When something happens to you, whether you like the cops or you don't like the cops, you call the cops. They're the ones that are going to come to rescue or to help solve the crime that was committed against you. So we need to have a police department and a community that's united. I believe in having officers police the communities that they grew up in, because there's a certain level of respect. When you grow up in a community and you police that community, the community looks at you differently. They look at you with respect. But when you take someone from upstate New York and you put them in an area that in an area where they've never really dealt with that culture, you know, it's a culture shock. It's like, oh, why is this guy doing that? Guys, because that's what we did in our country. That's what we did all our lives. We're not doing anything to break the law, but you know, this is customs to us, right? It's playing dominoes in the street. That's a Dominican thing, you know. That's the way it is. Okay, so I would make sure that public safety is number one. Number two is our economy and small business. As a small businessman, till today, I have felt the abuse of power, not only by the police. They put me out of business. I lost millions of dollars in this city because of New York City agencies abusing their power. Yet I don't take it out on the civil servant that's doing what he's told to do. I hold his bosses and the mayor of New York City and the governor of New York State responsible for the damage that they are causing to small businesses. How do you ask a small business to invest in your state when you have a policy of putting them out of business? No one's going to want to come and invest in New York. I will reach out all over the world and invite people to come to New York, because every city agency will be welcoming. Every city agency will have open doors to help solve problems. Of course, small businesses are going to make mistakes. We know that. You know, when you're used to doing something in Nigeria and you come to New York, you know, a lot of the times you don't understand that what was legal in Nigeria is not legal in New York. But you don't deserve to be put out of business because of that. You need to be able to work together with small businesses and let them know that you're their partner. Because guess what, guys? That's where we generate our taxes. That's how we pay our bills. That's how the city pays its bills, is by having people employed, and those employees pay taxes, and have the business owner pay taxes and real estate taxes in order for us to keep our streets clean, which, by the way, we have a huge problem with keeping our city clean. And I would focus on that. I would create neighborhood block associations, and those neighborhood block associations will be part of our city government. If you help us keep your block clean, guess what? We're going to reward you. How? We'll figure it out. But a clean city is what people want. A safe, clean, vibrant city is what people are looking for. And that's what I am going to bring to New York. That's how I'm going to fix New York. And I am going to make sure that organizations like your organization and the Times Square Alliance and the different bids around the city and different organizations are my advisors. I want to hear from you. I want to know, what can I do to make our city better? You may give me some good suggestions. You may give me bad ones, but you know what? There's no good or bad. It's all a matter of how you feel and how I am willing to govern. I think did I overstay my welcome?
This is great. I think we're ready. That was a great transition to talk about how you want to work with our organization and other organizations. It's a good time for some questions. Sure. So thank you for that. And Fernando, I love your energy and I love your passion for the city. And it came through this morning and all the things that you talked about. And, you know, earlier this week when we spoke, you know, you talked about sort of 3 priorities for you. And you talked a lot about, you know, public safety as your number 1. You talked about small businesses and the economy. And you also identified youth as a priority. So if you wouldn't mind, like to just jump into some questions to unpack some of those things you talked about, sure, that would be great.
Sure.
All right. So, you know, you told us you wanted to speak to our membership, get in front of sort of our network so that people can hear your message and hear about your priorities. So let's just go back to Rikers Island for a minute in the youth, right? So I know in 1990, you founded the Mateo Institute of Training, and you talked a little bit about it, the job training program for incarcerated first-timers and non-violent offenders, which later developed into a curriculum for inmates on Rikers Island. And, you know, this program we know provided training and practical skills for many of the incarcerated youth. How might your ideas for this program translate into overall job training pipeline for all New Yorkers across sectors throughout the city, especially as we look to recover from COVID-19? How does this lay the platform for a job training and a job workforce development program for the entire city?
That is an amazing question, and that is great. You know that New York City, I believe, has maybe, a few dozen vocational schools. That's not enough. When you have thousands of schools in New York City, you should have at least 100 vocational schools. And what you do is you team up, or you engage the unions. Okay, they have one of the best training programs for electricians, for plumbers, for carpenters, for laborers. Okay, and you're able to feed students into those schools and then allow them to build New York City or to build America. There are parts of, it's not just New York City, there are parts of this country that need skilled labor. And these people, when you have a skill, you can get a job anywhere. You can move anywhere in the world. And if you are an electrician, you can work as an electrician and make good money. You can become a builder if you're an electrician. If you're a plumber, you can become a builder because you're one of the trades in that structure that is building the project. Okay, so you get a few of these guys. Once they finish their training course, they're going to make upwards of $50 an hour. Okay, and with overtime, $80 an hour. You could make a damn good living doing that. Except that has been set aside for a few. I want it to be for all New Yorkers. And I will tell you that the city spends billions of dollars building and refurbishing and doing a new construction. The city's the largest landlord in New York. You know what? If you come out of one of our vocational schools and we're going to award a contract to a contractor, we're going to tell him, we want to make sure that some of these kids coming out of these schools are on your job. They need to be hired. They need to work. And that's how you do it. I proposed that to the late Mayor Dinkins, who was a dear friend of mine. And Mayor Dinkins said to me, Fernando, that's why the Mateo Institute of Training ended, because I had graduated so many kids and I had placed them in so many jobs that the contractors were already full of these inmates, right? Of these students, former inmates. And I said to him, Mayor, why don't you make it a policy that if you're going to award a contract to anyone doing business with the city, that they must hire a few kids from this program. It's not going to cost any more, but you're giving these kids and you know what he said to me? He says, Fernando, you don't understand what we've got to go through with the city charter. We'd have to change the city charter. That'd have to go through the city council. That's going to take a whole lot of time. You know what? No, not if you put it out there for public opinion. Not if you tell people, call your council member and tell them that you want this. Not if you put politicians' feet to the fire. You can get it done. It's all about believing in it. It's all about leading. It's all about being a leader and selling your points of views and making it happen. That's what it's about. It's not about looking for obstacles or reasons why not. It's like, those that always look at the glass half full, they never see it they never see it half empty. They always see it half empty. They never see it half full. I always look at a glass of water when I'm having it. And rather than telling the waiter or the server, give me more, I want more water, I look at it and say, wow, the glass is half full. This is cool. And it's good. That's how I would do it.
Thank you for that. And you talked a lot about sort of your being growing up and dropping out of school and school not necessarily being for you. And when you were a teenager, you started a carpet business, right? And you were able to grow it into a successful contracting business and then start multiple businesses after that. So when we think about sort of investing in our youth and thinking about sort of opportunities for formerly incarcerated, right? Just your experience to me seems like there's a pathway to small businesses that you can talk a lot about, and knowing the firsthand in difficulties in starting and growing a business, which you talked a little bit about. I'd love for you to, if you were mayor, right? And, sort of your priorities for small businesses, what would be, say, 3 things that you would do, especially as we recover from COVID-19, to help small businesses fight through this difficult time, right? Because we know that this is a pathway to wealth, right? You're an example. We know that this is a pathway out. How do we really help start and grow small businesses as mayor? What would be your top 3 things you would do to help small businesses? Lay them out for us.
I would want to create new businesses. Okay, I would like to engage what made me successful was who I was and what I had learned when I was 14, and the fact that I was a minority. When you're a minority in New York City, or a woman businesses are minority businesses. Why? Because we've always gotten the short end of the stick, right? I use that to my advantage. I use my color, my race, my knowledge to my advantage. I went after every minority-owned opportunity that was out there. Government has opportunities for minorities, and corporations that do business with government have percentages of their business that they should be giving to minority-owned businesses. The big excuse here is they're not around. They don't exist. What I would do is I would partner big corporations that currently do business with the city and tell them, we want you to do a joint venture. If we're doing $1 billion worth of business with you, I'm going to say, I want you to find or develop or help develop 5 small minority-owned businesses that you can subcontract to. And that's going to be part of how you're going to get this contract. If you don't meet those qualifications, we're going with someone else, right? And I would put a lady, like, her name is Joy Critchlow. This is a Jamaican woman. She helped make me who I was. She worked for Con Edison. And Con Edison had to do business with minority-owned firms. And Con Edison is not a minority-owned firm-friendly business. They don't like to give opportunities to minorities. Okay, she fought for minorities like myself, like African Americans, like immigrants, and she built Con Edison spends billions of dollars in goods and services. She made sure that she carved out hundreds of millions of dollars to give to minority-owned firms, and she would team up a big firm with a small firm and say, you guys join together. I want you, the big guy, to teach the little guy so that the little guy can go on his own in 2 or 3 years and bid directly with us. See, so what I would do is I would do that in terms of the city to create a lot of more women and minority-owned businesses and opportunities. As far as the businesses that have left New York City, they've left for many reasons. They've left because city agencies put them out of business. And I can tell you, as a witness, that I've seen hundreds of restaurants not go out of business, be put out of business. See, it's very dangerous, for example, what the governor just did now. He increased the capacity of a restaurant to 50%. But guess what he's going to do? He's going to throw out there another few hundred agents to go into your restaurant and find one extra person in that restaurant that can't be in there and take your liquor license away. He's going to send people into your restaurant to try to find violations rather than sending people in to say, hey guys, you need to not do this next time. or make sure that you do this or make sure you do that. No, they go in for the kill. It's like they're hunters. They have a rifle, and when they see that deer, they're going to shoot and they're going to kill you. That's why a lot of small businesses have gone out of business. Barbershops, hair salons, restaurants, bars. I mean, it's terrible. What I would do is I would take the $3 billion. I'll find out where that money was coming from, that they were going to give Amazon. And I would take that money and tell you, if you want to open up a hair salon, New York City is going to give you tax breaks so that you can afford it. When you own a business like I do, I pay probably $100,000 a year just in real estate taxes. That alone is a deterrent from me wanting to open up a business, right? So what I would do is say, if you open up a business, we're going to give you tax breaks because you're going to create 100 jobs for me or 50 jobs for me. And I'm going to make my money that way. The city's going to make their money by you employing people. So I would give them incentives. Amazon doesn't need $3 billion. They're the richest company in the world. They didn't even ask for it, but we were throwing it at them. Why don't you throw it at the young innovators that are opening up an electrical supply, an electrical contracting business, or a plumbing company, or a barber shop? Give it to them. They're the ones that really need it. They're the ones that are struggling. Instead, the city agencies, if you try to open up a business, I'm going to recommend to you, wait till I'm mayor. Because if you try to do it now, you're not going to open until I'm mayor anyway. That's how bad the bureaucracy is at the building department. Building department is impossible for you to get a permit to actually put up 3 walls in a restaurant and divide one room from the other. It'll take you 4 months, 6 months. Why? So that's why I know this from experience. None of the people running for mayor know this because they've never done it. So how are they going to fix something that they don't have experience in? See? So I would reach out around the world and say, come to New York. New York is the place you need to be. New York is a friendly and a happy city. We're going to turn the lights back on in New York. New York is a city that never sleeps. I'm not saying that you should have a boombox outside of your window at 12 o'clock at night and you can't sleep. But you know what? There are clubs, there are bars, there are places, our life is full of stress. And we have to remember we're human beings. We need to release that stress. Otherwise, you're going to get cancer, you're going to get a tumor, you're going to die, right? You need to give people the ability to have fun. That's what New York City was. It was a fun place to go. You know where people are going now? They're going to Florida. The mayor of Miami is having a freaking wonderful time right now because this city is booming. Everything is on. Everybody's living. Nobody's dying. Nobody's getting sick. Nobody's wearing a mask. You protect those that are vulnerable and elderly, and you let us live. We want to live. We want to go to a club. We want to go to a bar. We had a damn terrible weekend, a week at work. Stress is driving us crazy, right? Now you want to unwind. You want to go out with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend, with your husband, with whomever, okay? And that's what I want the city to be. People that have a nightlife place, I will allow them to hire a patrol car with 2 cops in it, and they'll pay for it. But guess what? When people leave that club, they're not going to stab each other. They're not going to shoot each other. They're not going to fight because there are cops there. That's what they do in Miami. That's what they do in Texas. That's what they do in so many different states. You know who we do it for? We do it for Yankee Stadium, for Citi Field, for Madison Square Garden, for Barclays Center. Why not do it for our smaller venues? It's simple. The cops make more money. Police officers make more money. The streets are safer because the cops are out there. And it's simple. But they don't know that because they've never done that before.
Got it. Thank you. I'm just going to shift directions for a little bit. I'd love to hear more about your work with taxi drivers, right? And so as the former president of the New York State Federation of Taxi Drivers, you know well the struggles of New York City taxi drivers. You organize them around the issues, and really have been nationally recognized as a organizer in that industry. we all know sort of the discourse and the conversations around what is happening to taxi drivers and the hardships that they are experiencing. How do you plan to deliver as mayor support to taxi drivers in a time where there are less people using taxis due to ride-hailing services and the decrease in people visiting the city right now?
You're referring to the yellow cab industry.
Correct.
Because they're all cab drivers, except a lot of the yellow cab drivers have now shifted over to becoming livery cab drivers or black card drivers. What happens is the following. Technology is technology. But the yellow cab industry is an icon. It's an institution in New York. Every movie that you saw in the past had the yellow cabs in them. You know, that was a symbol of New York. New York City actually robbed the yellow cab industry. The city's the one that owns the medallions, okay? The city sets a price on these medallions. And these immigrants, mostly immigrants, always saw that people that bought a medallion also bought a home. The medallion became their most valued piece of real estate, okay? And they bought them for $1.2 million, $1 million, 800,000, 700,000, 500,000. Those medallions are worth, if that, $75,000 today. How could you sell poor people, hardworking people, a medallion for that price and then devaluate it the way they allowed that to happen? They knew that Uber and Lyft and apps were coming into the market. So why sell somebody a rotten, if I'm selling you fruits and I know that there's a rotten apple in the bunch, why don't I pull that rotten apple out before I sell you the bunch? Because one rotten apple is going to ruin all the apples, right? That's what the city did. The city sold these people, these medallions. The city should be responsible for giving these people back their money and then helping them recoup their investment. And how do we do that? We do that by going to the federal government, like we have gone to the federal. There's $1.9 trillion being given out. Why didn't the yellow cab industry get their fair share? Why didn't the mayor fight for them when he knows that he was the guy that sold them the bad apple, okay? I would make sure that I communicate, set up even a bond. You create debt in order to get money. That's how the stock market works. So you create a bond that's guaranteed by the city that is equivalent to what these medallions were sold for. And you refund everyone their money. You do the right thing. And then the city can pay it off through the bonds, over time. Or we can ask philanthropists to come in, and we can name the medallions after Bloomberg. You have a Bloomberg yellow medallion, right? Now, Bloomberg's name is going to be infamous for life because the medallions in New York City have his name. They do that all the time with hospitals and universities. Oh, I want a wing in my name. Here's $100 million. Build a building, put my name on it, right? You can do that with city housing projects. You can do that with medallions. You can do that with all kinds of things. Cab drivers are such hardworking people. Everyone that opens that door and gets in their car is a stranger. It's someone that you don't know what their intentions are. You don't know what problems they may be having that day. You're welcoming strangers with problems into your vehicle. So cab drivers sometimes are psychologists, psychiatrists. Sometimes they just have to listen to people's problems. Sometimes they get, they're punching bags for others, that want to beat them up for no reason, right? And a lot of the times they just get robbed for their money. And they used to get shot and killed most of the times. So I would certainly create a space for yellow cabs in the city where they become relevant again. You have to be able to carve out certain spaces for them to work. I will not make that decision because I would be the kind of guy that would sit down with their leadership and hear them out I would sit down with the application people, hear them out, and then I would make a decision as to what is best for both. Remember, as a leader, I'm not going to be everything to everyone, but I will always make the best decision after consulting with organizations and after hearing people out. And that's how I would govern. I would govern as a partnership. I don't want to govern and, the city be ungoverned when I'm not here. I have a life. I've got grandchildren. I like vacations. I like to go to a bar and have a drink. I want to go to a restaurant. I want to go to a club. Because I'm the mayor doesn't mean I can't live. I want to live like you want to live, right? I want to be a happy mayor. And the way I'm happy is not by being miserable. But the way I'm happy is by being able to take my own walk every day, get in a cab if I feel like getting in a cab, like taking the train if that's what I want to do, like going to Zona de Cuba and hanging out and dancing, right? Because I'm mayor doesn't mean that I'm not a human being, doesn't mean that I don't have feelings, doesn't mean that I don't have a family. In fact, I have a bigger family because now New York City is my family. And that's how I would govern, City Hall.
Thank you. So I just want to ask two more questions before we wrap it up. When you were just talking about sort of, renaming and having the opportunity, you talked about NYCHA. And really quickly, would love to hear your thoughts. I know you have some experience with public housing in NYCHA, and particularly, and we know NYCHA is in desperate need of tons of things: repairs, better living conditions, job opportunities for many of the residents. As mayor, how would you fix NYCHA?
I would engage, having lived in NYCHA and having the problems that every NYCHA resident has with rodents, with cockroaches, with needles in the hallway, with unsafe hallways, with unlit, fronts. I would light it up. I would make sure that NYCHA is a vibrant. You want to beautify what New York City housing is. You could be poor, but that doesn't have to mean you have to live in a garbage dump. Okay, being poor doesn't mean you're filthy. Being poor means that that's your status, your economic status. That doesn't mean that you're not entitled to living in a clean home and in a clean neighborhood. I would engage NYCHA by engaging the foundations, by engaging the philanthropists, by engaging the rich. And by the way, I will welcome the rich to New York, and I will certainly not tax them, okay? Because there's a lot more ways of you getting their money. You can get their money by, it's like they say, you can get a bear with honey, right? Something like that, by being sweet. I would be very nice to these large corporations, the Goldman Sachs of the world, the Bloombergs of the world, the Merrill Lynches of the world. And I'd say, hey guys, why don't you adopt a city housing development? It's in desperate need of repairs. We don't want to use taxpayer money. But guess what? There's a housing development called the Jacob Riis housing thing. What did Jacob Riis do to deserve the name of that building? I don't know. I really don't. I know that today I would gladly put the name of Goldman Sachs in front of a city housing development and say, Goldman renovated all these buildings for the people. They provided private security for the building. They made sure that people that live here are living with dignity. I would engage the private sector to work with the city. I think that the city right now and the leadership that it has, they walk around like this, like if they're the big ones in the block. No, the big ones on the block are those that help make that block better. Those are the big ones on the block, not the mayor. The mayor's there to make sure that things get done. They're there doing it, which is very different. Getting it done and doing it are two different things. I would engage those people to make our city housing projects better. And that's what I would thrive for. And that's what I would achieve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for the last question, so you were recently endorsed by Bronx, Manhattan, Queens GOP parties, right? You consider yourself an urban Republican. I've heard you say that before, which I love. So how does your connection with minority communities, especially with the Hispanic communities and the Latino communities, as a Republican in a predominantly Democratic city like New York, make you a more viable candidate than others on the ticket? How will you win? What's your road to victory?
Because of who I am. And because of the Fernando Mateo they know. They don't know me as a politician because I am not. They know me as a doer. They know me as someone that when they've needed Fernando, Fernando's been there. They know that Fernando's out there fighting and struggling for every New Yorker, every single day, but mostly for those that need it the most. And that's the Hispanic community, the Black community. And that's where I've spent most of my time. I'm an urban Republican because I refuse to be a continuation of bad policies. And I use, for example, to them, I say, don't judge me because of the party line that I'm on. Judge me for who I am and what I've done. Judge every party judge every person for who they are and what they've done, not the party. Because quite honestly, I would win hands down right now. When you look at the last 10 years of New York, Eliot Spitzer, our governor, resigned. Schneiderman, our attorney general, resigned. Anthony Weiner, our congressman, resigned. Andrew Cuomo, right now, about to resign or get booted out, okay? And then you look at de Blasio and the work that he's done and how he's divided this city. This is not a city for all. For him, this is a city of black and white. And that's it. And that is wrong. You know, I hear about so many corporations saying, we're going to set aside money for Black-owned businesses, or we're going to set aside money for Black women businesses. I haven't heard one of them say, I'm going to set money aside for minorities. Because we live, you know what the greatest thing is that immigrant people live with Black people. We are in this together. So we should be in this together all the way. When you start dividing the city that way, what you're doing is you're creating animosity. You're creating separation between us. And I don't allow that. Growing up, my best friends were Black because you know what? Those were the people I lived with. So those were my neighbors. We used to play cards together. We used to play paddleball together. We used to play poker together. We used to do everything together. And it's like we're one, we're family. And that's the way I want it to be. I'd love to engage the Asian community. I'd love to engage more with the Indian community and the Pakistanis and the Muslims and, you know, and the Moroccans and with all of the people that live in New York. That's why they're going to vote for me. That's why I will be your next mayor. I see a clear path. You know, I can get every Republican vote and I will lose. The only way that I win is if I flip over a few 100,000 Democratic votes to vote for me, to vote for this urban Republican, right? And I'm going to achieve that. There's no other candidate in the Republican Party that can do that. Yo te puedo hablar en español tanto como te puedo hablar en inglés. Yo puedo llevar el mensaje en español. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, I can speak Spanish fluently. None of the other candidates can. And I can speak English fluently. And I think I'm a pretty good communicator. I'm a humble guy. You know, I look at life very differently than many people. I look at life as, you know, we're just passing through here. Nobody owns anything. You know, in another 20, 30 years, I am gone. So everything that I claim to own today, someone else is going to own, right? Guys, we need to wake up. We need to realize that we are sitting in the best city in the world. It's not London. It's not, you know, Tokyo. It's not Hong Kong. It's New York. New York is the capital, financial capital of the world, man. And we're here. When you ask me, Fernando, what's your biggest asset? My response to you will be being in the United States of America, having had that privilege, having my parents had that privilege in 1950 when they arrived in New York. and they made this their home. That is my biggest asset. And what's my biggest responsibility is while I'm in your house, I will respect it. So I will ask every immigrant to remember those words. This is not ours. We're here and we're guests here. And you do the best that you can to make your country, the country of your origin, feel proud of what you've been able to achieve in New York. Guys, I'm sorry if I'm winded with my answers, but I'm just like that, you know?
Well, this is great. Like I said earlier, I love your passion, I love your energy. This is what New York is. It's that flavor.
Once again, I love your hair. And when I'm there, you're gonna say, "Oh God, look, Mateo's hair looks like mine now, right?" Wow.
I welcome it. Fernando, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for being candid, your honesty, and telling us a little bit about your platform and your plan as you run for next mayor of this great city. And Stephen, do you have any last words?
I just want to add my thanks. I'm going to add and thank you for your passion, Fernando. It is clear and powerful.
Thank you. Only thing I can ask you guys is vote for me. We'll do this together, okay? Cross that party line if you're a Democrat. I dare you to.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning, and we will see you next Friday.
Thank you.
Have a great